Welcome to another edition of Trunk and Tales as we navigate what is happening in the world of politics. I'm Stacy Smith, and if you are watching or listening to this program, I ask that you hit the like or the subscribe button on whatever platform you happen to be using. Well, there are now 3 weeks until the election, and things could not be tighter. The averaging of polls by several organizations reflect just how close the contest is between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. We will talk about what the candidates and their parties need to do to try to eke out a victory. And we'll also once again take a look at the Pennsylvania Senate race, a race that could help decide who controls the United States Senate. That is part of what we will discuss in this week's edition of Trunk and Tales. With me to talk about this is my panel of political analysts and experts, and they are the former Republican governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Corbett. Mr. Corbett also served as the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania and also as the State Attorney General for Pennsylvania. Also joining us is Jim Byrne. Jim is the former chairman of the Democratic Party in Pennsylvania. He's now chairman emeritus of that party, as a matter of fact. Jim also served in city government and in county government. And also joining us is Joe Mystic, the guy I like to call the great philosopher of Around the Table with Stacy Smith, and especially of Trunk and Tales. And Joe's background is varied in helping a lot of Democrats across the state get elected. And also he served in city government. And you can read his thoughts about life and politics every weekend in the Tribune Review. Normally with us is Keith Schmidt. Keith couldn't be with us today on the Republican side. Hopefully he'll be joining us again next time we record. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with me this morning on the Trunk and Tales as we take a look at what's happening as far as the election goes. We are now about 3 weeks away from the election, and the polls indicate it is just as tight as it ever was. As a matter of fact, from the Wall Street Journal, this quote, if you don't mind me saying it, is in regards to one of their polls. The survey also shows that a campaign marked by bitter rhetoric, a switch of candidates atop the Democratic ticket, and 2 assassination attempts on Trump have pushed Americans into their partisan corners, with neither candidate taking a meaningful share of voters from the other's party. In fact, Trump, the former president, is holding 93% of Republicans across 7 states. Those are the 7 states that are considered toss-ups, while Harris, the vice president, retains 93% of the Democrats. Independent voters are evenly divided, 40% for Harris, 39% for Trump, another factor that makes the contest an up-for-grabs race in each one of those states. Have you guys seen anything like this before, how close it is?
Well, I was around to pay attention in 1960, but I really didn't pay attention to the commercials then, and I don't think we saw those commercials then as we see today. But I would say that race came down to 1 state at the very end, and it was a very close race.
Yeah, it was very tight.
Quite this close. Yeah, I've not seen anything quite this close. I think it's pretty clear that this is going to be a turnout election, and from what I hear, at least if you're thinking about Pennsylvania, there's not a van or a bus to be rented in Philadelphia and in the surrounding counties, because the Harris campaign has really reserved all those and is planning a massive turnout effort in the eastern part of the state.
I'm not going to play pick a poll, because I can pull some polls up here that would show you that there's Democrats going Republican or vice versa. Yep. Independents are breaking. Pick one. Yeah, forget it. Throw them out. This is going to be about who does the better field, who's done the better advance work on mail-in ballots, advantage Democrats, who has a better ground game, who's done better retail, advantage Democrats. We know who are in the trenches. We know who the persuadables are. Both sides do. The question is, which camp has the infrastructure to go get those votes? Advantage Democrats. A coordinated campaign in Pennsylvania this year, the likes of which I haven't seen since 2012, has been in play since even before Kamala Harris became the nominee. And what does that do? It identifies your voter, makes a relationship with your voter, maintains that relationship, ensures that voter gets their ballot mailed in, or alternatively, make sure that voter gets to the polls if you got to drive to their house and take them there yourself.
All right, I have to ask a question, Jim. If you're that confident about that, why isn't that reflected in the polls?
No. That's not what I said.
I know. I'm asking.
I'm confident in the ground game. So the
Okay.
polls may say what they say. Throw the polls out. The person who's going to win this race is going to be the person with the better field operation. I think that's why we're going to win. That's it.
All right,
That's all I'm saying.
then I will ask this question as well, and all of you can answer it. And that is, you're saying that the ground game is there, and you're trying to get you've targeted those voters who may be a little wishy-washy, undecided, not sure which way they want to go. Are there any of those people left? I mean, how can you not? Yeah, I mean, it has to be so small.
That's part of what I'm saying. What I'm also saying is don't let your base that are giving you your 47, 48, 49 become complacent either. Kick them in the pants and make sure they get to the polls respectfully.
Yeah, I think the best news for the Harris campaign is that it is close, at least as far as the polls are concerned. You know, I don't put a lot of faith in the polls since they had predicted that Hillary Clinton was going to win by a landslide when she ran against Donald Trump. They're still trying to figure it out, and pollsters are, and they haven't figured it out yet. So I'm not sure what they mean, but if I'm in Harris's corner, I like that the polls are coming in with this being a real horse race.
Well, and I would agree. The team that gets their voter out there normally is the one that's going to win. But when we say get the voter out there, we don't really know at this point how much their voter have already voted. This mail-in voting has changed the dynamic of what we were used to 10 years ago. And both sides now have embraced mail-in voting. It was to Biden's advantage 4 years ago when Trump did not embrace it. They have embraced it now. They're trying to get everybody out there. Where I think the difference in the race is in that independent voter who has left one of the two parties or who was always independent as to where they're going to go. Just before we got on here, I was flipping around on screen here looking for different stories, and Real Clear Politics put up a story, and I didn't even get to read the whole story yet, that 61% of those people polled in their poll think that the country's on the wrong track. That's never good for the incumbent party, but I'm not sure that even in this day and age carries the weight that we would have assigned to it back in 2010.
No, I think you're onto something there, Governor.
I'm not sure she's seen as part of the incumbent party. It's a really unique situation. I'm not sure how she's done this, but some people see her as an agent of change, and and she's Joe Biden's vice president. So as much as they can, the Trump team would like to have her wedded to the Biden administration, but some people still think of her as not being the incumbent. It's a pretty fascinating race.
That it is. Well, I was going to say what the governor was talking about there is that it's very interesting in that Trump leads her in Harris in regards to the economy when people are polled. He leads her in regards to immigration when the people are polled. But yet, she comes on strong and is basically tied with him for this race. It's really a fascinating race.
He comes in strong in those departments, but look where she comes in strong on social issues, on women's rights to choose, on having a soul. I mean, these are the type of things that allow her to be ahead of him in most polls that you see if you trust them to begin with. And she is, by most accounts, 1 or 2 points up in all the Rust Belt states, except for maybe Wisconsin, but that's being worked on now. But no, I mean, that's one half of the coin. Look at the other half of the coin. Having character, having compassion, having optimism, having hope, letting women have a right to choose, building a middle class. Advantage Harris.
Perhaps there's also, if I can bring this up with what you said about her, Joe, is that maybe it was just Republicans jumping on this. I don't know. But the fact when she was asked on The View, what would you change from what happened in the Biden administration? And she said, I can't think of anything I would have changed. So you're right. She's right now able to walk that fine line of being part of that administration and at the same time looking as if she's setting out on a different path of her own.
Well, she also walked it back within 5 minutes and said, I think I would need what I think I could have done differently at a minimum is put more Republicans into the cabinet, which I think kudos to her. because I've never seen this many Republicans abandon their party in a general election. We're not just talking the guy next door who's been a GOPer his whole life. We're talking vice presidents. We're talking senators. We're talking governors. We're talking lieutenant governors. We're talking former members of the President Trump cabinet and joint chiefs of staff. So it was good for her to say that and make a caveat, and it hasn't nicked her at all.
Yeah,
Well,
I think she'll have a better answer for that question the next time it's asked.
Mm-hmm.
well,
She's coming up for one.
Liz Cheney,
She's
too,
going to do an interview with Fox today or tomorrow.
Yeah, Brett Baird,
Yeah,
tomorrow. Yes. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Well, we'll see how that goes, and I don't know that putting a Republican in your
She has the courage to do it. That's the point. She has the courage to do it. Joe Biden didn't do it. I'm not saying he lacked courage. She has the courage to do it. I don't see Trump on CNN doing the same thing. That's where I'm coming from with it. The fact that she's even going
You
into
would
the
love
Lions
to see that.
Oh, I would. The fact that she's going into the Lion's Den and is going
I
to.
want to see Trump on MSNBC, Jim.
What's that?
I want to see him on Morning Joe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will say that in 2020, he did make those appearances on those networks, and it didn't do well for him. So,
well, he should do it again because he's going to be called a coward if he doesn't. That's what I'm saying, and we're already starting to.
I have a feeling that he doesn't care what you call him anymore.
No, he doesn't.
I may be wrong, but
back to the narrative. It takes courage to do something like that. Kamala Harris is showing courage.
Yeah. All right. Well, we were talking about this just before you joined us, Jim. And that is that we are just absolutely inundated with these political ads right now. And maybe this goes hand in hand, and maybe you've already talked about it, so we'll dump the conversation. But that is that what good are these ads doing now? I mean, they're all repeating the same thing over and over and over again. And we've all kind of sat here and said the number of people that you can convince to change their vote or to get off the fence is so minuscule that it may not make that much of a difference. So why keep spending the money on these ads?
Voters are like jurors. I mean, you have to keep them focused up until the very end. And whoever, just continual engagement in the world of instant information and instant gratification, attention spans, because of so much inundation through our media and other outlets, mandates that it be done this way. And it's also like voters are like creditors as well. You could have 3 years, 11 months, 3 weeks, 6 days, 23 hours, and 45 minutes of success. You drop the ball in that last 15 minutes, that's what the voters are going to remember. And I think the reason that both campaigns are so vociferous in their inundation of all social media outlets with these narratives repeating is because they don't really have a choice. I mean, it's a paradox. Are you going to anger somebody? You're reaffirming to your base how critical it is to get out, and to the extent you're trying to squeeze a few points out of what's left of the persuadables, in addition to a coordinated campaign, you have to do it.
In a race like this, you have to hold your ad spots just to keep the other side from getting them.
Absolutely.
That's what's going on here.
If it's either you're not getting it, I'm just going to keep it. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's part of the chess game too. Sure.
It's a spending war.
When these ads are running, give me some background on this, if you can. Are they testing these ads? Do they know which ones now work and which ones don't work? Is that why we see the same ads over and over again, and others that you may have seen once or twice?
They're testing and retesting them. It's an ongoing process, and they're running the ads that hit the mark more precisely.
Lost you there for a second. Maybe we'll get you back.
Well, I'll fill in. It is, I think, they continue to test it, but they're also testing it as to where in Pennsylvania, for instance, does a certain commercial work better here in Western Pennsylvania as compared to the Southeast, or as compared to the Scranton area, the Erie area. So they are totally analyzing that. But I agree with Joe that they don't want to give up their time. They don't want to cede that time because they know the other side is going to buy it up, and they don't want to be outspent, especially here in the last 3 weeks.
There's also micro-targeting involved. A lot of the commercials we're seeing were tested, but some they may see what works and what doesn't work. But there is a science to it through the algorithms. Bill Ayers, who ran Obama, Pennsylvania 2012, who worked with our coordinated campaign very closely, he shared with us some of the science of those algorithms. Every time you click on a link, every time you buy something online, every program you watch, there's a fingerprint. And true story, Bill Ayers told us, I'll make this as quick as I can. Bill Ayers told us that they had an issue with a certain demographic in the Cleveland suburbs, third shift, union, African American, middle-aged male, watches Judge Joe Brown reruns at 3 in the morning while he drinks a Bud Light. He wasn't joking. They had an issue with President Obama's stance on a certain specific union issue in that area. They ran commercials to that demographic at 3 in the morning in the Cleveland suburbs. Now, if I'm watching that commercial, it wasn't meant for me. I want to fire somebody for wasting the ad time. The guy across the street who fits that demographic saw what he needed to see to be for Barack Obama. That's the algorithm that they have today.
And did it work?
Yes, we won.
Well, yeah, I mean, in that particular element, they were
did.
targeting.
Oh,
yeah,
yes, it did.
Okay, that's interesting. Since you talked about targeting ads, there's now I'm a man and I'm okay to be a man. I'm okay to vote for a woman ad that's being played, not necessarily in Pennsylvania, but it's being played. It's for Harris. We had Barack Obama in town, I guess last week in the Pittsburgh area, and he kind of admonished black males, saying that they may be afraid to vote for a woman. Does this indicate to you, Governor, that there might be an underlying issue for Harris?
I think it indicates that the Democratic organization believes there's an underlying issue, and they're trying to prevent that right up front, 3 weeks out, and they're going to continue to work on that if that's the case. I'm not sure the Republicans know it or don't know it at this point in time. It's hard to figure out former President Trump's campaign strategy on this, other than go to the battleground states and spend a lot of time in Pennsylvania. But I think the Democrats are reacting to what they see as a potential weak spot, weak link in the whole body armor of their campaign.
There's polling that shows African American males are not at the same levels of support that they were for Joe Biden. So again, you don't leave any variables to chance. You pursue all of them, and that's what you're seeing. And I think President Obama was very effective when he came here, and he just put it on the table. He said if there's some type of a concern or reservation for voting for a woman for president, and he was speaking to a room of African American men, the demographic that this poll speaks to. And the president said, you have to get over that. Do you honestly think that President Trump is going to do anything to make your lives better? Remember, this is the man who advocated for the hanging or the execution, the death penalty, or some form of capital punishment for men of color in Manhattan who were ultimately acquitted. And what has President Trump ever done for that demographic, men of color, whose polling isn't as strong as it was for Joe Biden? So he's just laying out hard facts to the demographic where the numbers aren't where they need to be. And many leaders in the African American community, in addition to President Obama, have stepped up and made the same advocation. And they all remind the demographic of who is it that's supporting Mr. Trump. Folks running around doing a lot of racist conduct and racist behavior in racist groups. There is no solution with Mr. Trump, and that's what needs to be reemphasized.
I will point this out, and I have no idea. This is from, I can't remember where I pulled this one from, but it's an ad that maybe from the Wall Street Journal again, I don't know, that Quentin James, you ever heard of him?
No.
I hadn't either. Founder and president of the Collective PAC, a pro-Harris group, said it was important for Democrats to use policy to persuade black men to vote for Harris over Republican former President Donald Trump. He says that Harris's support with black men is somewhat soft because they are not feeling the idea of a female president, saying that Obama's comments that they are not feeling the idea of a female president, he claims were not helpful, and he's an African American as well. So I have a feeling you are absolutely right, Jim. There are more people who feel what you said than Mr. James, but I thought I'd better bring out the other side as well.
Well,
So
I've never seen absolutes in any form and in any facet of life. But it doesn't change the margins, in my opinion, of what needs to be said, and it certainly doesn't change my opinion.
Well, there is one absolute. That is one. This is one of the best political bantering programs around. I think, isn't that an absolute?
Well, that's that's
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
One more on this subject, and then I'll let it go. There is some talk, and this is again, if this is coming from the Republican sides, and that is that Catholic voters in 7 battleground states favor Donald Trump over Kamala Harris by 5 percentage points. Some say it turns out that there is a cost of making your candidacy about abortion. In fact, it's this poll, and again, it was done by a Republican pollster, and it's done for the National Catholic Reporter, that the former president has a larger lead in Wisconsin, where he's up 18 percentage points of Catholics over Vice President Harris, and 12 percentage points in Michigan. It did not mention Pennsylvania, and it also went on to say that there were several states where it was a basic tie between Trump and Harris among Catholics. So is there a chance that a Catholic vote could make a difference?
Well, I think it will, but the Republicans like to call this an abortion issue, but Democrats should be calling it a women's health care issue and the freedom to make your own health care decisions, just as all men do. Now, both sides want to characterize it differently. I think at the end of the day, the reversal of Roe versus Wade is going to work to the advantage of Kamala Harris.
Okay, good. Let's move on here just for a second, and that is that this week the second senatorial debate in Pennsylvania between the incumbent Senator Bob Casey and the challenger Republican Dave McCormick will be taking place. So, Governor, you're a veteran of debates, and you've had one debate, and you're going to go into the second debate. What do you do in that? I mean, how do you prepare for that? Are you looking for, how do you try to get a one up on the other person?
Well, you're always trying to get a one up, but I think in a case like this, and I haven't watched any of the debates this year yet, and I did not see the performance of the two of them, but you'll sit down with your campaign team and try and figure out where you scored points and where you need to defend. It's sort of like a boxing match. Don't you agree, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And what points do you want to make? And in this case, because he is the challenger, he has to be able to make the most important points that he feels comfortable with making, and putting Senator Casey on the defensive as much as he possibly can. And one that I have not seen out there yet is, I think that Senator Casey's lack of leadership, a major leadership role after 18 years in the United States Senate, would be one that I would probably be attacking. That, well, what's he done for Pennsylvania? He's not a leader, and there's other people there that have been less time. In fact, if you're looking for leadership role for Pennsylvania, I think Senator Fetterman, who's at the end of his second year, has developed more of a leadership role than Senator Casey. So if you're looking for a potential weakness, that's what they're probably going to be talking about. At least I would be talking about that at this point.
I'm surprised they haven't come at him with that, Governor, since the very beginning. I would be surprised if they didn't bring that up at this debate. I would be surprised with 2.5 weeks left or 3 weeks left that it would change any of the margins this late in the game, though. Where was this in May or way back when he first announced? That's one of those, Stacey, we talked about the repetition.
Mm-hmm.
This should have been, the airwaves should have been inundated with that, and they weren't.
Yeah, he did bring it up in the debate, their first debate, but it wasn't, a primary focus for McCormick in that first debate. I mean, he did bring it up, but
yeah,
I think Bob Casey will bring up Dave McCormick tweeting out from Philadelphia in an Eagles jersey, "Go Steelers," at a tailgate party. I think we'll see that. That'll resonate.
Hey, I can't get Connecticut Dave out of my head.
Things like that are what hook. There's your hook.
Trump's an expert at throwing these nicknames on people that stick. Well, he may have given Connecticut Dave his nickname because it's a good one, and it's lasting.
Well, to the governor's point, McCormick has a nickname for Casey, and it's Punxsutawney Bob, because every 6 years he shows up. Oh, and the final one on the Senate poll. I mean, on the
He
Senate.
needs to run that commercial more because I
He
haven't
always
seen
draws
it.
a crowd.
No, he said it in the debate, and I don't think they've done it any other time. I mean, there's so much animation you could do with that one. I mean, if I were doing it, but who knows?
I got a nickname from George Bush. He called me the teenage mayor, but that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Well,
you
you
were.
still, yeah, you were the teenage
Yeah,
mayor.
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're only 37.
I may still act like it, but I'm much older.
Let's go back to the Senate race just for a second here in Pennsylvania, and that is the polls show that Casey at 40. This is the real clear average of polls. The Casey at 47.8 and McCormick at 44.6. So it's a 3.2 lead there. But when you take a look at just the last polls since October the 8th, of which there were 5, Casey is only up 2.8. Does this indicate a trend of any kind? And again, I know you guys don't put a lot of faith in the polls, but that's all we have.
There's a pattern there, Professor Governor. I've seen it. They're out here. We call it the hourglass, the October hourglass. They're out here. They're hovering here, wobbling a little bit. Then all of a sudden they come in, then they go back out. Seldom do they cross in a race like this. But we're in the hourglass effect with 3 weeks to go. Don't be surprised, guys, if it starts to go back out the other way in about another 10 days.
Yeah, I concur with Jim.
But I'm going to go. I think in my race, my first race, we did make the cross.
It happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I just don't.
That's because you had all those southwestern Pennsylvania Democrats voting for you, Governor.
You
That's
did.
what it was. Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Well, does it bother you at all, Jim or Joe, that Casey can't seem to break over 50%?
No, yeah, Rick Santorum won every time with less than 50%.
No, I'm not.
You know, and he had a distinguished career in the Senate, so he can. It happens.
Yeah, I don't see that being. I don't think that's going to be one of the things that make the hourglass do what it did with Governor Corbett and do this. I think it's going to come in. No, I don't see it.
If I were Casey, the one thing I'd be worried about is the indication of that Real Clear Politics poll. 60% of the people think the country is in the wrong direction. Does that get down to a senatorial race? I don't know.
It should be part of the debate for sure.
He's been there for 18 years.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's talk about something the governor and Joe Mystic have been working on for several months now, and that is basically trying to, if I'm saying this correctly, let me know if I'm not, say it, that you're basically trying to get people to know that they can accept the results of the presidential election, that there's nothing fraudulent going on. Am I correct? And that's what you guys have been working on?
Yeah, we are. The governor's the Pennsylvania chair of that organization. He does a wonderful job for us, and also a national board member. But it's about educating the public in terms of our electoral process and making sure they understand that it is a fair process and they can trust the result.
And for people watching this, keepourrepublic.org is a website. Keepourrepublic, all one word.org, where we are attempting to educate the public who may not completely understand the electoral college system and the voting process and everything, but also the issue of, are the elections safe? And if you had an opportunity to see 60 Minutes this past Sunday, you saw Al Schmidt, the Secretary of the Commonwealth, a Republican, talking about we anticipate safe elections and clean elections. You saw me talking about very briefly about I've not seen any evidence. Nobody's produced any evidence that the election 4 years ago was fraudulent. You can make all kind of accusations, but with my background as a prosecutor, I shouldn't be accusing anybody of anything if I don't have any evidence. And to this date, we don't have any evidence of that. But we do have everybody talking about, oh, it's going to be a fraudulent election again. That's misleading the public.
That all can be traced back to one individual, in my opinion. And he's
well, yeah. If I can, I remember 4 years ago on election night, we were all doing the same thing that we're doing now, except it was live, and we were analyzing the results as they came in. And early on, with the regular day vote, that if I can call it that, votes cast on the election day, Mr. Trump had a big lead going into about 11 o'clock at night, if I'm not mistaken. And then all of a sudden, the mail-in ballots were counted and started countering what the vote during the day was. And indeed, Mr. Biden won by what, 80-some thousand votes for the state of Pennsylvania. And I think that sort of thing kind of didn't set well with people, that all of a sudden, because mail-in balloting, as you mentioned, Governor, was relatively, new, or not new, but people were using it more because of COVID. All right, Jim, you're going to argue with me. Go ahead.
What people didn't it sit well with? I'm curious.
Well, obviously, the people who think it was fraudulent.
Who?
Yeah, Stacey, I'm a Democrat. A lot of us find ourselves ahead early
Yes.
in the evening.
Right.
All the way up to midnight, and when the tea rolled in, we just get crushed by the Republicans.
I didn't scream
and that
foul
didn't mean it
when
was fixed. It
Eisenhower
was
lost
never
in
fixed.
2004 when the tea came in when we went to bed that night.
Yeah.
And let's remember, it was the GOP who didn't allow us to open the mail-in ballots until Election Day.
And unfortunately, they're still doing the same thing. You still can't do it.
So here's what they're doing. They're creating conspiracy theories based on a dynamic in Pennsylvania that they created themselves. It's hypocrisy. Point to 64 some cases, Governor, wasn't it? That went to federal court. They all got thrown out because the people running their mouths, once they had to take an oath, shut their mouths because there was no evidence. And so, look, seriously, because it took long. You don't hear Democrats saying it's rigged because the tea comes in at 4 a.m. It's a distinction without a difference. All right.
Well, it's an old
chairman today.
They're setting the probable cause for the big lie.
Yes,
and,
sir.
The big lie's coming if Donald Trump loses this election. But we've seen this before from demagogues, and we saw it before right here 4 years ago. So I would look for it again.
Any conversation that enables a conspiracy because of how the law is written is, in my opinion, an undermining of this republic. And it shouldn't be buckets of water, not gasoline, to that narrative every single time.
Let me make an observation, though, too. As compared to 4 years ago, I think that the counties, all 67 counties in Pennsylvania, the counties around the country, the Secretary of the Commonwealth, Al Schmidt, everybody is better prepared to address this issue.
A Republican, by the way.
And a Republican, and to respond to this issue as compared to 4 years ago. One of the things that I didn't get to the air when I was talking to CBS a couple of weeks ago was that I have a little pet peeve that the networks start calling races soon after the polls close in certain states because they've done exit polling. To me, exit polling is just totally fiction as far as I'm concerned. And I think they need to be more responsible in doing that and just saying, we're going to wait for the results. But they all want to be the first one to pick who's going to become the next president of the United States. They're not doing this country, especially this time around, a great service if they aren't very, very careful. Now, in the big states that, we know where New York State is going to go. We know where California is going to go. We're not sure where Florida is going to go, although probably good idea, and probably the same way with Texas. But the battleground states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, even North Carolina now, maybe Georgia, maybe even Nevada and Arizona at this point in time, they need to wait and not get people's expectations up ahead of time.
Well said, Governor. I totally agree with you, sir. You're absolutely right.
Advertisers don't like that. I know that, but that's what I think they need to do.
Well, unfortunately, the state of Pennsylvania may be one of the last ones to report again, because as Jim pointed out, what happened the last time is that the election officials were prohibited from counting the ballots from mail-in ballots until after the polls closed, if I'm not mistaken, or no, that did the day of, and the day of the election. And that set them back because there were, hundreds of thousands of mail-in votes.
Hey, Stacey, let's make sure that we understand this.
Yes.
They can start opening the outer envelope at 8 a.m. and they can stack them up. And then at 8 p.m., when the polls close, if it goes to 8:15 or 8:30, then they can start counting all the ballots. If you go to the polls, let's go, like my polls in Sherwood Township, I go to the poll My vote's recorded there. It's reported on a thumb drive. It's driven down at the end of the voting to a warehouse that Joe and I have both taken a tour of in Allegheny County on the north side. That is all secure. And oh, by the way, none of these machines are connected to the internet. So we'll address that fiction that was out there 4 years ago. At the same time, they start counting the ballots. I believe they'll have a better count sooner this time than 4 years ago. Philadelphia has said, oh, they think that it's going to take them 3 or 4 days. I'm suspecting that Philadelphia, this is my gut, is saying, well, we went 3 or 4 days, and if we do better, look, we perform so much better. I don't think it takes that much longer if they have purchased, and I don't know what they purchased, the equipment. Now, the counties who have purchased equipment using federal money, they've agreed that they're going to continue to count the vote 24 hours. So they can't take off. They're not going to break down and, let's close up shop today and we'll come back tomorrow morning and work 8 to 9 or 8 to 5, whatever. So I think it's going to be faster than it was 4 years ago.
If I'm not mistaken, the Secretary of State also, Governor, said that there is also a paper trail for each one of these ballots cast, right?
There is, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Joe, you want to go with that?
Yeah, there's a paper trail for every ballot cast. And in Allegheny County, the early dump, the first dump of results, of returns, was what they called a dump, will be between 8:05 and 8:10 probably, because they will have had these paper ballots poised because they invested in the right equipment, and they'll just run them through the machine very quickly. And we'll get a return, an early return of mail-in votes before anybody in the Commonwealth, most likely. But we have purchased the most expensive and the best equipment to be able to do that.
Okay, good.
358,700 Democrats have voted so far in PA compared to 130,076 Republican. 35% of mail-in applications have been returned. At about approximately 1 million requested versus 2 million 4 years ago during the COVID pandemic.
Interesting.
And 4 years ago was the first time we did this, and I think that created part of the chaos.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt. That's what I was trying to say before. So, gentlemen, we've gone way over our time. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you join us again for the next edition of Trunk and Tales. We'll see you then.